Okay, I call this meeting to order of the City Council of the City of Bellingham. This is our afternoon committee session. Sorry, my mic feels really hot. We only have committee of the whole items this afternoon. So we're going to jump right into those. We have 3 items today, and then we'll have some executive session items this afternoon as well. So first up on our agenda is a multi-jurisdictional resolution regarding the 2036 population and employment allocations. The Growth Management Act requires the county and the cities to work together to adopt population and employment growth forecasts to be used to update comprehensive plans. In November 2013, the City Council approved preliminary population and employment growth allocations, and those recommendations were forwarded to Whatcom County. The County Council approved by resolution the requested allocations in March. The attached resolution memorializes the allocations. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Greg Ockett.
Good afternoon, Council. Greg Ockett, Planning Department. I thought I would take just a couple of minutes and go through the brief history of how we got here with respect to this resolution. We began working with the other jurisdictions last year, beginning the process to update all of our comprehensive plans. All of the cities in the county have to update comprehensive plans by 2016. One of the things that we process is establish population and employment growth. Numbers help us when we're doing our planning work, looking at how much land we have available for development, looking at the capacities of our roads and our water and sewer treatment systems, looking at how many additional acres of parkland we might need, and so forth. So the numbers of respect are important, and it's important to have them early on in the process. So jointly we hired a consultant, again this was last year, to help us come up with the numbers. Basically what we get from the state is a countywide forecast, a range for what the growth might be countywide. But we don't get estimates for individual cities, and we don't get any employment growth forecasts. So we got together, hired a consultant to help us refine the numbers and do that work. That consultant's report came out in July of last year. In October, our Planning Commission reviewed the report and the recommendations of staff and forwarded a recommendation to you to adopt the high population and the high employment growth forecasts for 2036. As was noted, Council reviewed those numbers or those recommendations in November and voted 6 recommended for to the December. The County Planning reviewed the recommendation of Bellingham, change any of the numbers. So numbers recommended went for the County Council. The County Council in March adopted the recommendations of all of the cities, so they didn't make any changes either. So all of the population and employment growth forecasts cities recommended were adopted by the County Council, and those numbers are reflected in the resolution that you have in your packet. The County Council did add 2 whereas statements to the resolution. I did want to point those out. They are the last 2 statements on page 1 of the resolution, page 52 of your packet. And they have to do with the TDR program. The county is very interested in getting a workable TDR program, as are we. And so add language stating that. And they also wanted to signal their intention that any increases to any of the jurisdiction's urban growth areas should come with some provision for TDRs. It's not, again, it's not, those are not binding, they're whereas statements, but it signals their intent that if a jurisdiction is seeking to expand their UGA, there has to be a provision there, or there should be a provision in there for TDRs, transfer development. They added the statement. I think that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to emphasize that this is a non-resolution. We're not bound by these numbers for our work. Take this forward our plan. We look at asset facilities. We look at water. At the end of the work, that work is a different appropriate. Then we can go back to the county and say, we've done our work. here's what we found to adjust the population growth forecast for Bellingham, either up or down, whatever it is. But this is the starting point. Okay?
Gene.
Questions?
This is no different than what we've done in the past.
Actually, in the past, what we did, and the reason we're doing this at the beginning of the process, is last time we all sort of did our own thing.
Yeah.
And it all came together in county council with everybody using different numbers, and it was a real mess. So we're trying to get agreement up front this time.
Gary.
And they use the language to expand an urban growth area on the last whereas. That means if we want to go additional urban growth, the current ones that doesn't pertain to the current area that's listed as urban growth, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Michael.
First of all, I'd like to ask for your forgiveness for standing. Due to back problems, I've been advised to not sit down as much as possible. These are the beginning numbers, and I start with the right beginning numbers. So, concerned with the number the council ended last November. Part of our recommendation was sort of a package deal that the city was interested in taking more of the county's growth in exchange for lowering growth in inappropriate non-city areas of the county. What the county did, however, is accept everyone's increased numbers and lowered no numbers to offset that. So I would say our original request wasn't fully honored, was halfway honored, and I'm concerned that we've agreed to a number with no particular benefit as not part of a comprehensive deal. So I'd like to continue discussions and internally before approving this.
Jack.
Greg, what assurances are there that the due diligence that the City of Bellingham is going to be using will be also done in the same fashion by all the other entities that are reviewing their own projection numbers?
We are all bound by the requirements of management. Right? Capital facility planning is a key part of that. The work has to be done, or you're not in compliance with GA.
But is the methodology going to be the same? Because you can certainly have a wide range of how you go and apply, but is everybody going to be using the same rules? What I'm concerned about is, if we use rules and we're doing a really good job of assessing this and we really understand what's necessary, especially because of our previous record of our annexation issues, that other cities or even the county itself has not had the opportunity to go through that learning curve, and they may not end up using the same type of methodology that we would in this type of go-around. That's what one of my main concerns are.
I think that message, actually, I can comment to that briefly. That message has been coming through from the State Department of Commerce loud and clear now for well over a year. As we move into these next round of updates statewide, the Department of Commerce is very clear that this update relationship between land use planning, population growth, and be paying much closer attention to jurisdictions submitting their comp plan updates and looking for what they framed as far back as a year ago now as a much more realistic relationship between providing capital facilities, paying for those, and types of growth that jurisdictions are paying for. So I think, Jack, to your question and to Greg's response, having the Department of Commerce administer and oversee growth management in the plan updates, they're looking for that consistency statewide. And our job is to deliver an update just like every other city that is consistent with what they're looking for and consistent certainly with provisions of the Growth Management Act. So,
are they providing tools as far as what the methodology actually is going to be, or are they just simply interested in what the overall outcome is going to be?
I think the tools are already there. I mean, we've been through multiple rounds of updates now since the early 90s, and it's from a commerce perspective, I think it's coming from the not necessarily the enforcement, but the application, the review consistency of the work that's being done, and having them statewide tighten up and bring greater consistency to those reviews that they're doing on the back end when jurisdictions go and do their work.
Yeah. I guess the concern, and I Michael's concerns on that, but the concern, I guess, is that it's an analogy to how assertive our council has been about dealing with the TMDL, and we seem to be well ahead of DOE as far as a statewide organization, agency that is supposed to be reviewing issues about the lake. I don't know how Commerce is going to deal with with these the growth management numbers or the implementation of the study.
Yeah. So just to here for a second. So I think what the numbers are showing us is that the non-UJA areas are reducing their targets here over time. So, and Greg can expand on that a little bit, but that's the direction of council that came from your recommendation. Generally what's happening here in this non-binding resolution with Exhibit A is that we're moving in that direction towards less growth, less development in the rural areas. In regards to where we're at in this process, I think Greg gave a really accurate description of where we're at currently. What my concern is that there is a finished stake in the ground for this comp plan update. It is June 30th, 2016. That stake doesn't move. So we're anxious to get this work underway. And as Greg already pointed out, once we get into the analysis and once we create a set of facts based on looking at different alternatives, how we can achieve these the high employment and the high population growth forecasts, it will be after going through and doing that analysis, looking at the alternatives, if we need to come back and have a discussion with council saying we really need to put some additional thought into this, where we're headed, that's the intent of the non-binding resolution, is that we have the ability to do that. But my concern is every day, every week that starts to tick by now on the front end of this process, before really getting this work underway, is a day or a week on the back end of the process that we're not going to be able to have those discussions, other important discussions, again, because the back end of the process is set. It's June 30th, 2016, and we've got staff resources allocated this year to begin work on this, and we're anxious to get going. And it is a process. Several of you have pointed out, it is a process. It's a long process, as some of you can attest to from last time around, and we're anxious to go.
Thank you.
Can I make just one quick additional point? Jack, there is agreement on how we define our land capacity, and there's a set methodology defining capacity, how much capacity, percentage of you take lands, and there's methodology. There's agreement on that. So there's a standard methodology for all of the jurisdictions with respect to looking at capacity. The county is required to monitor the amount of growth that's going to the rural areas, and they do a report every year that talks about how growth is going to the rural areas. And in the 1990s, 29% of total county growth was happening in the rural areas. In the down to 24%. The whole allocation is 15%.
Pinky, and then Jack.
Okay. I'm new to this process. I wasn't here when we did this in November, so I'm just trying to get myself a little bit educated on this. And I will tell you that I'm a little concerned of us going high. Make me wonder, because we're committed through GMA and UGA, and we'll have to be held to and make decisions. I would rather see a more accurate beginning, and even takes a week or two to figure out. I'd rather have a better understanding of what base those numbers on that before we get into the process. I'm kind of curious because what our growth numbers have been over the last 20 years, 10 years, and 5 years, are we really in the high category?
The numbers are, the high growth forecast is not based on what's happened in the past. The medium growth forecast, the medium number, is based on what's happened in the past. I think that the reasons that the Planning Commission and the Council selected the high growth forecast is because Bellingham has, over the last 2 decades, accommodated about 41.6% of total county growth. So we've had about 41% of the total county growth has happened in Bellingham. If we just want to continue that, that's the medium growth forecast. If we're saying as a matter of policy that we want to accommodate more of total county growth, in other words, help reduce the amount of growth that's going to the rural areas or that's going to the Lake Whatcom watershed, then we need to do more. And let's see if we can do more by doing the work over the next 2 years that will tell us if we can do more.
May I ask a quick follow-up? So is it okay for us to go over if we project under? But if we project over, then we're held to that, right?
Again, these are preliminary estimates. We're not held to these. This is the starting point. So after we do the planning work, if we figure out we can't accommodate the high forecast, we can only accommodate the medium forecast, we have the opportunity to then go back to the county and say, we need to change our allocation. So we're not locked into these numbers.
Yeah, I'm going to interject real fast. In my experience, essentially, we're just choosing on an agreed-upon framework to start studying, and through that, we'll some form we can select our final information that we want to plan with at the end of the process. Is that an accurate statement? Okay. Jack.
So I want to do another. I understand the land capacity agreements in that is between the dollars that. That's really clear what we've done in the past. My concern is that the step to do with the capital facilities and the infrastructure associated with it. For instance, the U Street annexation proposal that we dealt with a few years back, and we found out, you know, what we thought was going to be a simple annexation actually was going to cost the citizens $31 million to annex what would be equivalent to 350 homes of additional capacity. It's that type of analysis. Whatever we do as the city of Bellingham, I'm concerned that that same analysis is done the same way, apples to apples, with Birch Bay or Columbia Valley, which seem to have very high numbers, projection numbers, or any of the small cities or the county itself. I'd just like to know that if we're going to go into this game, that it's a game of apples to apples and not, you know, apples to pineapples or whatever, that we don't go and sell our short by doing a really good job of analysis, but knowing that, you know, because we've got a good staff with that, that some of the other jurisdictions have got a very small staff because they don't have the resources to have a very large staff, and they may end up doing an analysis that might be not at the same level as what we would do. And that's the concern that I have, because I don't want them to go and say, well, yeah, we can just simply go and, you know, put a water line in over here, or you know, the streets are going to go over there, and just call it good. What is the mechanism to make sure that their promises are going to be substantiated in real, accurate financial numbers or practicality numbers or statements?
All I would say at this point, Jack, is that the requirements for capital facility planning, excuse me, in the GMA are the same for every jurisdiction. You have to forecast what your needs are going to be. You have to show that you'll have the ability to pay for the improvements that are going to be needed. That has to be in your capital facilities plan, and it's the same for every jurisdiction. They have to be able to show that, so they have to do the work. The level of sophistication may be different. There's nothing we can do about that, but we all have to do the same work.
Roxanne, and then Kelly had something to add.
Well, I just wanted to say that I was in the audience when the council first talked about this when I was running, and I just want to express how relieved I was that the City Council went with the high numbers. My background in economic development has so taught me that higher you go, the more economic development you get. And that doesn't have to be a fearful thing. That can be the right kind of development the community needs. Bellingham has only become an attractive community based on our environmentalism, the way we protect our water resources. Also, when we win a war, people are looking at this thinking, I may want to live there, I may want to retire there, I want to raise my there. We need high numbers so that banks will create loans. Banks will create the loans that will affect the development of our city. That's why I will always protect the higher numbers.
Now I'm on.
Welcome.
Welcome. So the point that I saw when the numbers came forward at first was that we had taken a lower percentage of the growth, that the rural areas had taken a higher percentage. And what I thought I heard all the council members say, and I may have misunderstood this, was it wasn't that we were going to limit, which we can't, what the other jurisdictions were going to take, whether it's Ferndale, Blaine, blah, blah, blah. It was that we wanted to see reduced numbers in the rural area. And, you know, one of the scenarios I heard, which is we'll give Bellingham the medium numbers, we'll give more to the little cities, and we'll accommodate the growth in the rural areas. I think that's counter to every principle that this council has stood up for through the legacies and strategic commitments. So I think that taking the higher number that we are not bound by allows us to do that planning, and the numbers in the rural areas were lower and potentially could be lower depending on what decisions are made about water resources, which are also part of GMA. And in case any of you, so to me, the result was what you had asked for. Now, all the small jurisdictions, the city and the county, have all adopted this preliminary number. And I think for the sake of moving forward, having the preliminary number that we can change will help us move forward faster to know if that number should be changed or not changed. And there were two things that we made in the newspaper again today. One of them was the fifth least obese city in the country. I mean, so they had Orlando and they had Boulder and then they had Bellingham, Washington, and of course they didn't pronounce it right, Bellingham. And then the second one was in the state, what are what job in the cities in the state do we have a higher percentage of than we should, if you look at the average? And ours was bicycle repairmen. So what that says to me is that we are a mecca for recreation, and people are going to want to come and live here, but as Roxanne said, they need to get a job. And that's one of the things this council has been very clear that they want to see the wages, the kinds of jobs, and the job availability increase. And we do that by planning for it, but only as high as we can really absorb. So I think the council did the right thing, and I appreciate it too.
I mean, I understand the way you explain it, Greg, how we wanted to preliminary agree on numbers. Years ago, going through this 3 or 4 times, you might as well have put a tennis net across the street. We were just batting the ball back and forth, back and forth. I understand that. I read whereas number 6, and it said will not be made until the comprehensive plan is adopted 2016. No, it's important cities agree, the county and the city agree to preliminary allocation in order to coordinate transportation, modeling, capital, facility, environmental review, and use recommendations. If we go through all that and numbers don't jive, do we have to go through all the other, the facility planning, environment? You got to go back, go over everything that was talked about or discussed?
It's unlikely because we're using the higher numbers, so we're planning for this level. If it turns out that we're here, all that planning work is good. It would only be in the circumstance where we decided to adopt a much higher number that we might need to go back and do some additional planning work. But I don't think that, I don't
That's
see
not
that.
a matter what you use.
And remember, our environmental work will look at a range, and it'll be a higher number and a lower number. So we'll study this wide range. So then when the final decision is made, the impacts will have been analyzed in the environmental review.
And Greg, doesn't the work that you're doing that indicate what, it will indicate what the number should be too?
Right.
Influence what the number should be. So the planning that we do will also indicate whether we need to make an adjustment in the numbers. So I don't think you need to redo. I'm pretty assured you don't have to redo all the work. And as Jeff just said, it's easier to pare back than it is to say, oh no, we picked too low a number.
Terry?
Yeah. I believe the discussion that we'd had in November when we were looking at the higher number did have to do with looking in the past where we've taken high numbers with the agreement the county would reduce, and that never happened because of policies. And with the idea that the county, we would accept higher numbers if the county would put in place some elements that would show that there would be reduction in the expansion into rural lands, that we have assurances that part, not like before, we put infrastructure and other kind of stuff in, and the county just makes it easy for people to move out there. So I know we got new council members, and I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt. If you do share a little bit of Michael's concern about, with that, but since we do have time to this isn't a final decision, I do, willing to go with that and give the benefit of the doubt that we're going to see some work on the county's end that's going to provide some assurances that we're not going to just get the continuation of land use in the rural areas as always has been. So I'll go with this as starting numbers, but I'm going to be watching to see that there's some movement on that, For us just to do that and not happen in the policies on rural lands doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Terry. So if we end up with a number and we have to demonstrate how we plan to accommodate that number, the rural areas are under the same parameters, correct? Yeah, so however, this has always been the case, and it hasn't always worked out for us. So I'm maybe even more tired than most people about litigation with land use, given my employment history. But anyway, Jack?
So, Greg, you had mentioned the 15% and the 24% that it was that the non-UA was had in the 2 years in the 2000 decade of actual. What did those numbers include Birch Bay and Columbia Valley, or were they exclusive of it? Because when I look at the unincorporated area of Birch Bay, Columbia Valley, and what we call non-UGA, it actually comes more like almost 23%, the total of those three together. And so I'm just wondering whether or not we're dealing a fair comparison between the previous number and what we're looking at in Exhibit A.
Bay, Columbia Valley are non-UGA areas, so they're not considered part of the rural areas. They are UGAs, but they're not cities.
Well, so the 24% that you had mentioned earlier about the actual for the 2000s, did that not include then those?
No, it didn't include Birch Bay or Columbia Valley.
Okay. And then one follow-up is that in November when we were talking about this, I believe we had a request to ask the county to, as far as your negotiations when you had with the county, to talk about unincorporated area impact fees. Did that conversation go forward, and what was the result of that?
There were no, I just stated that was a request to the city council. There wasn't much discussion about it at that point.
Because I think Ken Mann's doing is as far as the TDR program, I think that's a good thing to do. But to have a TDR program and to have a playing field that is not level at all when you're dealing with the incentives to go and build in the unincorporated areas of the county with or without a TDR program, it just seems like the real issue is that the county has to have an impact fee that is at least on par with the other cities that are producing impact fees. I think that's really what the issue is. And I don't have a problem with the TDR program, but I think that that's something that really needs to, that I would like to see our council and the staff to really stress with the county that, that's part of these negotiations. It isn't just something that you can mention and then they just laugh it off and go somewhere else. I would really like to see that to be a real critical part of this.
Terry and then Kelly.
Since the county council added a couple whereases here regarding the transfer of development rights within it, would it work for us to add a whereas relating to wanting to see impact fees in the county as a disincentive for continued growth?
I would support that.
Would that make any sense to staff?
Well, one of the issues right now, as we look at changing this, that all the other jurisdictions then would have to vote on this again. And so I think there may be another strategy, because when we push back on Executive Lau's on reducing the development in the rural portions, that he responded to that, and the council supported that. So I think that if we wanted to have this discussion and we wanted to put it as a whereas, we might want to think at what our main goal is to get this planning done well. And we could still push policy-wise on that, but I don't know if we would get all the other jurisdictions to vote for it, and then we would be still here waiting for some kind of an agreement so we could move forward.
Terry.
So we're the last jurisdiction this comes to, huh? Everybody else has had a chance to look at this before us?
I think we already all passed it.
I don't know that all the jurisdictions have looked at it. I know some of them have. It's just a matter of scheduling.
Curious, but we get this after, and we're expected to just to accept their whereases. I'm assuming the assumption is we have to accept it, because otherwise it's got to go back to all jurisdictions. Is that correct?
Yeah, the language.
If we strike these whereases, we say we don't agree with them, it's got to go back to all.
It's got to go back.
Okay, so they're assuming certain things, and I think we have the right, if we want to do it, to do, but I don't know if we do. I just want to make sure what's out there.
I wonder if we might want to consider, we gain our authority to do activity and growth management planning from the county. It's a little awkward to, I was just thinking of wording another whereas the way they've worded them. It doesn't really make sense, but I wonder if we might want to consider doing this resolution and then another action that we could take that would officially appeal to the county to demonstrate to us some work or mechanisms or commitment to exploring ways to reduce rural growth.
I personally think that would be a good idea, because we have control over that, and it's not based on what other people agreeing with us right now. So this is a request from the city, which I think would be that other way that I was talking about, so that we could move this forward, but we could still have an opinion or a direction about what we'd like to see, understanding that we can't force other jurisdictions to do things that we think they should do necessarily, but we certainly can encourage that. I'd like us to think about what is the goal that we're trying to achieve here, and what I believe the goal is for the city is to achieve infill and get the, a lot of the jobs and the residents outside of the rural areas. I mean, I think that I've heard that fairly clearly. We don't want sprawl out into the rural areas. So we just make sure that actions that we're taking are getting us closer to that goal rather than further away.
Michael and then Terry.
I'm actually glad to hear a lot of concerns being expressed here. I share many of them, but I'm still oppose the idea of passing this particular resolution as a starting point. There will be more process and more discussion. Terry says we've had assurances the county will hold the line and we'll be watching. Well, I don't want to have to play an after-the-fact game where we disagree with the outcome later on. I'd rather we spoke honestly up front. I think we should have stuck to the reasonable approach the county took. They said, let's start with a medium. Or how about the reasonable approach the small cities have taken? They medium. Various went way out on our own, suggested a high number on a achieve them, but on some deal that there would be an offset. And I don't think there has been an offset. There's no lowering in the UGA numbers. And I think there's a factual issue here. I'm right. Historically, in the unincorporated areas, it's been 30% and back and now around 4%. But at that time, most recently, the county goal has been like 14, 15%. In other words, their new goal of 15%, I think that new. They've always had a goal. So there's no particular movement of the county's part. Didn't meet their goal last time. They have the same nice goal this time. Again, I don't see an offset of movement from the county's side that we somehow got in exchange for what we're doing. I don't think this is as directly related to economic activity as some other council members seem to believe, because these are population numbers we're talking about. I believe in a balanced approach to annexation. I think we need to look even more importantly at our commercial areas and do judicious residential expansions and upzones and annexations. The number that we're talking about, this high number, is well above the judicious level, in my opinion. It's well above the historic trends. It's more than most boom years, and it's needed to achieve the high goal. It's each year, every year, for 23 years without stop. I just think it's an unrealistically high number. There are lower numbers that are still above the OFM medium, that still require growth and annexation. They're still economic boosters, but they're nowhere near as high as this particular high number. My concern is this is just not a very smart place to begin, because we offered this high number for sort of symbolic reasons rather than for good planning reasons. I'm hoping for a compromise, which is maybe above the OFM median, but it's not the high number that is currently adopted. I agree. The city of Bellingham should take a higher percentage than we have in the past. Historic amount around 42%. There are lower numbers that are above the OFM median where the city still takes higher than historic average. We don't need to go to the high to achieve that goal. We don't need to go to the high number to create more capacity outside Lake Whatcom watershed. We can go for a medium-high number. I wish that we would start at a medium-high number as a matter of policy here up front, rather than be forced to take that decision on down the line when, no surprise, we find out that our infrastructure and capital costs are enormous and it creates a lot of problems for the city. This is mostly, in my mind, from my perspective as a city council member, about infrastructure and capital costs. And that's what the staff has emphasized that. This is how many roads we build. This is how many pipes we lay. This is how big our sewer treatment plant is. This is a capital cost thing. And we're going to be taxing more, charging higher fees, and spending more than necessary if we pick and adopt too high a number. Rather than pull it back from a mistake, I think we ought to set a nice, healthy growth level, but not this growth level, which I think this is unrealistic. So I appreciate all the efforts to fix this in later negotiation, to arrive at a more realistic solution after we've done all this study, but I would appreciate it if we could do something about changing these numbers now to a more realistic policy-driven number at the beginning of the process. And I don't think it will hold things up significantly, because the staff is going to do the same amount of work whether we pick a number which is up or down by 3,000 or 4,000.
Okay. Just to be clear, whatever we do today is not actually picking a number that requires us to make infrastructural investments. Just want to make sure we know that. Kelly.
Well, two things. One factual. All the small cities and the city of Bellingham picked the high growth number. Obviously, the small cities are not going to grow as much, but everyone picked the high growth number, so it wasn't just Bellingham. Secondly, the beginning of this process was in November when the vote on this council was 6-0. This is a great conversation, but if we wanted to have this conversation at the beginning, it's a conversation that should be in November. Now we're kind of down the procedural road. It doesn't mean you can't change your mind. but we would be disrupting a process that's been going on since November to come up with a reduction in the rural areas and a number in the other areas that we can adjust as we look at how the plan proceeds. So, Michael, this isn't the beginning. This is kind of the end of this part, not the beginning.
Terry and then Jack.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything, but this is a continuation, Mayor, of the conversation from November. Because we had asked at that point about the impact fees and asked to take that forward as part of our recommendation, I believe. And so this isn't new conversation. This is continuation. We pick by numbers. It's not. It's just nothing happened with that other than it was laid there and said council wants this, and that was it. It wasn't. That's what it sounds like. It wasn't kind of pushed that this is important for council members, that for us to take high numbers, that there's going to be some assurances that other things are going to be done, that it's not going to have the continued growth in the county. So this is not a new conversation. I think that's why we're bringing it up, because it's what we brought up in November, not something that's just coming up now. I will still go with this because we did, but I think that needs to be pushed harder and made clear that without assurances, we're not solid on the. We did that with stipulations.
Can I ask one question about that, though? Because we don't have control over whether or not counties or other cities develop or adopt impact fees. So are you telling me that if we put it on the table, nobody grabbed onto it right now, are you saying that then we would have said we're not going to take high numbers if we don't get that assurance? Because to me, the urban centers is where we want the growth, not like we're being punished by taking the growth, but we actually believe that that's where the growth should be, where it's cheaper to develop, where there's already infrastructure, where we hope the jobs are. So I'm not sure asking them again or trying to say, okay, we're not going to take high numbers. If you don't, who are we punishing if we don't take the realistic number that gets us the results that we've said we want?
But the reality is, we can set numbers and we can build infrastructure to those numbers, but unless something's done in the county to reduce the continued expansion into the rural areas, it doesn't matter what our numbers that we set, other than it's going to cost us a hell of a lot more. And I'm not saying this is the only thing, the only item, but I am saying we need to see some assurances that there's going to be something done in change in land use policies for us to, want to expend all this additional money when it's just going to go to the county expansion in the rural areas anyway. And so that's a big difference. Then it's not just cut like what you're saying. That's not what we were saying.
Well, I guess
we want.
Okay.
I want to make sure that I can follow and relay to the county executive, or if I talk to council members, the desire of the council. And I am confused. I have to admit, I'm confused now. So
Well, maybe
I
we
want to
can
make sure
clear
I'm
it up a
doing it
little.
right.
Yeah, maybe we can clear this up. Okay, so we do know we are on the right trajectory. It's slow, but we're going in the right direction with county growth declining. And Jeff, do you want to add something before I call on Jack?
I think it may have been mentioned earlier, but the difference between the medium and the high projections, Michael may have acted on it a few moments ago, it's about 1,000 people for employment forecast. 2036, it's a projection, the high of 129,000 versus the medium in 2036, which would be, and again, these are rounded to the 1,000, 21,000. So the difference between medium and high and over the 3. Again, I think the position of staff, which is supported by the mayor, is the high projection enables us to get the analysis to analyze, to establish a fact set. if getting into that analysis, and it's not going through and doing a complete capital facilities plan, it's starting to run the models, starting to look at the different tools we have available to accommodate the high projection number of 129,000 in 2036. We look at that and we say, yes, there are viable alternatives here to achieve that. This is generally how we would go and do it. No, there are not viable alternatives here to be able to achieve this. We need to peel back and take a look at this, have a discussion with the council, and say, here are more viable alternatives or certain viable alternatives that can get us in, and maybe that does mean a lower number. Maybe that's not 121,000, maybe it's a slightly less number. As it was pointed out, maybe it's somewhere in between 129 and 121. But we feel that starting at 129, looking at the high projection and beginning that work enables us to broadly analyze and plan for and look at the alternatives, see what that would mean in terms of capital facility planning, generally cost, and it's easier to come down than it is to suddenly realize, oh, we have to plan upwards. So, again, that's where we're at, and that's how we would like to proceed and recommend to City Council to proceed.
Okay, I'm going to call in Jack, and then I'm going to hope somebody up here has a motion to make.
Thank you, Kathy. So I'm kind of with Terry in the sense that I can support this in terms of the preliminary numbers and allow staff to work on how to justify those particular numbers and what it's going to end up costing and what types of additional land supply we might need for that. But again, I think that we are at a serious disadvantage when it comes to impact fees. And Mayor, I think that it really needs to be understood that most of these small cities, and certainly a supermajority of the population of these small cities, already have impact fees. And to think that they would not be in the same boat that we are in right now, where it's easier to go and build, it's cheaper to build out in the county, you know, outside of Blaine or outside of Ferndale or outside of Linden, than it would be to, or Bellingham, than it would be to go and build within those cities. They have the same dilemma that we do. We're having to spend most of the money that has been spent on infrastructure by the city of Bellingham after this plan has been done, has been to support the rural areas. We've got Sunset. You know, we ended up you know, blowing out Sunset into a 5-lane road in order to accommodate a little bit of Bellingham population, but certainly it would made it very easy to go and access the rural area of the county. We did the same thing on, you know, we went and repaved Hannigan. That was, again, another great way of getting into Bellingham. And that's fine for economic development. I understand that. But it also provides an easy and convenient way of building out in the county, which is exactly what we don't want to do. It would be much better to have a level playing field where you know, the impacts are felt equally across the board. And I think that the other small cities, and this speaks to what Terry was you know, introducing, was to add another whereas in here about impact fees. I think the other small cities would be interested in doing that. At least most of them. It's just, I don't know what, I can't speak for them, but I would think that they would share the same interest.
And each of us has a peer. I have a peer at the county and at the small cities. You guys all have peers. I think the idea that Kathy raised about doing a resolution where we gain support from our peers to do something that we don't have control over, forcing them to do, is a great idea. I'm not opposed to that at all, because obviously it does make it easier in the rural areas when they don't have impact fees. I think we can separate those two things, though, by moving forward, letting the staff move forward on the process to get ready for our comp plan, and also have a strategy for how we approach the other small cities and the county to work on something that levels the playing field. I don't think it needs to be done in this resolution, only because I believe it will slow it down. And staff is anxious to start the analysis work knowing what the potential number is, so we can recommend adjustments if that's in fact what we need to do. So I don't disagree with what you want to get done, Jack. I think there might be a better way to do it, is what I'm saying.
Okay, I'm just stating this for the record because I know that one of our county council members is very interested in how Bellingham is going to meet our population projections, but it seems he's interested in some of the issues that are out there, which to me seem to be just as much mine. And I don't know why we're being picked on for something like this.
Okay, let's,
I'm ready to make a motion.
okay.
I'll move the resolution that's in the packet. And I also agree with Jack and Terry and everything that pretty much everybody said. It's going to be a process. We've sent a ton of resolutions across over the last, I don't know how many years about traffic impact fees. But now with the new makeup over there, maybe there'll be something accepted. I agree with the mayor. We should keep it down that road differently. And but let's give the staff a chance to see what happens and go from there.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Michael, last chance.
Well, we could refer it to a committee, but anyway, one of the things I heard, I want to make sure that's never said again. That this argument is not about no growth or low growth. Everyone is in favor of putting residential and, for that matter, industrial growth closer to where infrastructure already exists or can be easily provided. We're not the argument is about levels within healthy levels of growth. So I just don't want to set the terms falsely that we're opposed to growth or development. We're talking about rather healthy levels, historic levels of growth, or much higher numbers. In my opinion, numbers lack credibility. My understanding is that across the street over the county, people looked at the numbers with a great deal of surprise and criticism that we could meet them. It's like no one really believes we can achieve these high numbers. Staff isn't saying as much, but I mean, they're opening the possibility that when the analysis is done, these numbers will show to be unrealistic. I think there is a medium number. I think I can see it already. If the council votes otherwise, I'm not without hope that we'll reach good solutions. My final comment is that I have a process problem with this and with many other things. When matters come before us, it seems like it's somehow always too late in the game. We're somehow a little bit powerless to affect the outcome or the language, that there's got to be some other way of doing it. And we always seem to be in a hurry to get started. And I think that those conditions do not always lead to the best solution. In this case, I don't think it is the best solution. I could be wrong. But even if this is the wise vote, and I happen to be wrong on this issue, I still take issue with the sense of powerlessness, lateness, and hurry. I think we need to try to find ways to make important decisions in a more relaxed atmosphere. Thank you for giving me the time.
Anyone else?
Yeah, one final point. When we're done with this comprehensive, Michael, I guarantee you won't feel rushed. You'll feel exhausted.
Okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Okay, motion passes 6-1 with Littlequist in opposition. I'd like to entertain a motion that we request the administration bring us a resolution that we could work with to talk to other small jurisdictions in the county and request that the county demonstrate some ideas and mechanisms that are tangible to us about how rural growth could be reduced.
I'll move that.
Second.
And to be clear, it's about traffic impact fees. I mean, schools, we wouldn't talk about. Parks, we want to...
Mostly traffic.
Probably that would be the majority, but frankly, any good idea they have, we'll take.
Okay, but you want to make sure it includes the traffic impact fees?
Yes. And Linda, do you have the second? I was going kind of fast.
This is a 5-minute item, so we got to take our time.
Can we get that off the...
Get that out of the way. I don't know.
Ask the administration.
To bring a resolution to talk with the small cities in the county regarding mechanisms.
To reduce rural growth.
Rural growth.
That's good enough for now. That's the gist of it. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-0. That is the end of this item. Thank you, everybody, for a great discussion. This growth planning process is going to be excellent. Okay, next up. Sorry for the delay, everybody. We'll do our best here to get moving. Next is a presentation on the participation of the City of Bellingham in the Lean Academy. In December 2013 and January 2014, the City of Bellingham participated in the Lean Academy offered by the Washington State Auditor's Office through the Local Government Performance Center. Lean methodologies focus on continuous process improvement through employee engagement to maximize customer value. After receiving a one-day leadership training and a two-day team training, a 5-day Kaizen event focusing on the review process of city center design review permits was completed in January. A total of 39 recommendations for continuous improvement, including 9 priority recommendations, were made by the team. An implementation plan has been completed and action has been initiated for the priority recommendation. And I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Thomas and Kurt Nabelfeld and Kelly Linville.
I just want to say, this is a very exciting process that the city's going through. And I went to the, what did you call it, the wrap-up, the report out, after staff had spent a week doing this. And I could actually feel the, I wouldn't say excitement, they were all tired, but the anticipation of making our processes better, all the things that we want them to be. And I know that Kurt will probably explain to you some effects that we've had already about this. And there's also 3 more units that we're going to go through so that all the permits and all the development and everything is covered. So Jeff has told me that we're starting the second one, so there'll be 2 more. And we focused on the downtown permits because we're doing the downtown plan, and it made sense to have a streamlined permit process as we redevelop our downtown core. So I'm really excited about it, and I think the staff and the director have done an excellent job.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So changing the channel to a lighter-hearted topic, but just as important, the city did participate in the Lean Academy sponsored by the Washington State Auditor's Office in December and January, December of last year, January of this year. Reflecting backwards for a moment, it's, I think, important to note all the way back to late 2007, early 2008, the Permit Center has been in a mode of continuous improvement, focusing on more timely, transparent, and predictable service to our customers in the Permit Center. Way back when, even though maybe we didn't know it at the time, we really were conducting all through the last several years different processes related to moving from a linear permit process to a concurrent review process, looking at streamlining occupancy for our building permits, doing completeness review in real time with the customer at the front counter, providing them certainty on review dates for the permits and so forth. So it's been quite the journey we've been on. This, I believe, is a very important step forward and a large step forward in really embracing lean principles and applying lean to different processes, not only in the Permit Center, but I believe the mayor is looking to take that throughout City Hall over time and apply it to any process that we have, that we do here in city government. So the first slide, I should say, really relates back to what the mayor just noted. When we decided on a scope of work to begin this Lean Academy and our first journey into actual lean application, what we settled on was a development project in our city center area. And what we broke it down to is a 4-phase process. You'll see up there on the screen: land use enablement, pre-application conference, public facilities construction, and actual building permit. What we're going to talk to you about today is phase 1 of that, the land use enablement, the city center design review process. That's the actual process that we took through the Kaizen event and actually deconstructed and reconstructed, looking to apply lean principles to eliminate waste from the process, view the process through the customer lens, and provide more predictability, transparency, and timeliness in it. And that's where we'll get into some recommendations with you. That leads right into our next slide. What is lean? It's a continuous improvement process. Plan, do, check, adjust. It used to be ACT at one point in time, but plan, do, check, adjust. It never ends. We're constantly looking to improve process, to do things better, and to move forward. This, I will mention, lean began its roots in the manufacturing sector. Toyota was infamous for taking lean applications and applying them to manufacturing processes. How to build cars cheaper and quicker. It's transferred over into government in recent years, and the city of Redmond, I think, would be a really good example of a city that's been on their lean journey now for a number of years, 6 or 7 years, and they've taken and applied it throughout the entire organization, just not focused on development. The employees are really engaged from the bottom up, and I think Kurt's going to touch on that. We put together a team of actual staff that work project in and project out with our city center design review process, and that was the team that went through the week-long Kaizen event and came up with the recommendations. And then during the report out, myself and the mayor and others were present to hear those recommendations and to embrace them and start putting them into our work program to actually implement those improvements. Kurt's going to talk a little bit about eliminating waste, non-value added items. There's value added, non-value added items. We'll get into that a little bit. And again, just stressing this one more time, looking at the process through the lens of the customer. And what are they seeing as to how the city is completing the process and improvements through their perspective. The actual Kaizen event that we did at the end of January on the city center design review process, there was to it. In December, the mayor and department heads as well as permit leadership staff attended a one-day leadership training. Leadership training focused on the actual beginning the lean journey and setting the tone of the culture to have this move through the organization over time, having good communications with our city staff in terms of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and what it means to them. And then also discussing the scope of what did we want to do as part of this Lean Academy to actually take the first process that we would put through the application of Lean, and that's where we came up again with that 4-phase city center design review process in the following 3 steps to embrace a project, and it would be a project in our city center area. Just quickly, the 2-day team training, that was the core team that attended the Kaizen event, the 6 folks from planning as well as some other select interdepartmental staff were invited to a 2-day team training. That really focused on teaching the tools that the team could use during the Kaizen event to deconstruct and analyze a process. Examples include, and I think you'll see one here later in the presentation, spaghetti diagrams, which really tracks the flow of how a process moves. Another one that I liked actually was called the 5 Whys, and it was actually conveyed in a fairly elementary manner where it was young children will just continue to ask why, and they're never satisfied with the answer. But it really can get to a root cause if you go deep enough down and you really figure out why something is really happening, as opposed to just saying, well, that's how it is. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Kurt, and he's going to walk you through a brief overview of the Kaizen event at the end of January.
Kurt Nabafel, Planning and Community Development Department. As Jeff mentioned, I'm going to kind of walk you through the actual Kaizen event, which is focused looking at a specific review process. Again, we're looking at the land use enablement component. So what is land use enablement? For some of you that may not be familiar with our review process of the permitting, the land use enablement step is where we actually make sure that the proposal that's coming forward meets the zoning, it meets development regulations such as our SEPA, our environmental reviews, and make sure that we're evaluating our critical areas if those are nearby. And it also so this first phase one of the land use enablement Kaizen event was establishing our. Here you can see, as the mayor mentioned, this was the last day. We took this picture of our team. We were a little tired. It was pretty intensive. These events are, but we were all pretty happy and still had smiles on our faces. Again, we started to look at the Type 2 Downtown Design Review Permit and the review process associated with that. As Jeff mentioned, the key component of lean processing or management is to look at it from the customer's perspective, which a lot of us don't do that too often. Process in order to key component is making sure that we're looking at it from the customer's perspective and identifying who is the customer. In this customer, some may say from a proposal is our community at large. Well, when we really kind of break this down, the customer is an applicant that's presenting this. The community at a whole is a stakeholder involved in this process, but our customer is really truly developer applicant process. Looking at it from the customer's perspective, we look at all of our steps in kind of two different manners. The first is where is staff adding value to the review? And second, where are we adding non-value added steps? A non-value added step is, for a good example, is like creating a file folder. It's value to staff in order to be able to track this application as it goes through the process, but creating this file folder really does nothing to the applicant. So that would be a non-value added step. Those non-value added steps, customer perspective is weight. So again, starting off with our proposal or this Kaizen event, what we wanted to do was we're reviewing our process through the customer's eyes. One of the best ways to do that is to hear what the customer has to say about our process. And so what we did is we set up a focus group. It included several architects. It included a designer. It included one of our design review board members. And it also included an actual developer. This was actually set up in a manner to help us identify what they commonly saw as a good process, or what was good about our process and what maybe wasn't good about our processes. I have to mention this. One of the key things that came out of this was actually that our process, because design review is somewhat subjective, of what I think what a building looks good versus one of the other planners looks good. One of the things that we actually heard from this group was because of different way of looking at our design and what it did was it almost forced developers to submit the same building time and time again. This review process didn't hold a lot of certainty for them, and so they knew that once they got a permit or an application through the permit process and it was approved, well, they had a pretty good idea that those same buildings would go through just as easily. So what we found out, and one of the comments that they made, is that our review process may actually be hindering the creativity of architects because it's such a lengthy process. One of the ways of dealing with that, and it's also one of the #1 rules of lean management, is to standardize your workflow. By standardizing workflow, it eliminates the subjectivity and it allows us for each planner to apply our criteria the same way over and over and over again. What this does is it creates capacity in staff. If we're not going different ways in different directions, and we all kind of agree upon the rules and the regulations and how they're going to be interpreted, it makes it much easier for us as well as the customer. And so that's gaining capacity from a staff perspective. Okay, now getting into the actual Kaizen event, the first step that you have to do is you have to map out your process flow, and you're wanting to identify those wastes. As Jeff mentioned, there's several different types of waste that we worked on, everything from underutilized staff to just complexity of our rules and regulations and unnecessary reviews and reportings. So one of the common things that we all learned about Lean and Kaizen events is that you go through a lot of stickies. What you want to do is you want to visualize your workflow, because that really helps you identify areas or gaps or wastes in some manners as well. And so what you can see up in this picture is the design review process for a downtown permit actually had 18 different steps. And then down below you can kind of see these little yellow stickies. What those are is identified wastes within each step. After reviewing that, our group was great because we were ready to go. After the 2-day training, we were excited. We knew that there was opportunity here after hearing from our focus group, and we were really ready to go. And that first day, I think overall we identified like 16 different areas of waste. That was pretty big, we thought. I mean, 16 steps that we do now that are wasteful hinder the process. The days that we worked on this, we identified 39 possible changes to reduce waste. It's 39 steps. That was pretty big. Most of those were all centered around kind of our operational changes, such as, where can we have software automate the work instead of staff doing this type of work. The timing was great on this because we're also looking at new permitting tracking software. So we were learning from this event what we wanted to make sure that our new vendors would be able to supply to us. So it was a perfect opportunity there. We also identified process change, how we do things, and then we also realized that there were some complexities in our code. That complexity is one of those wastes, identified wastes, and in order to change that, we have some legislative changes. As Jeff mentioned, there was a lot of mapping of this and visualizing our process. And one of these great maps that we did was the spaghetti diagram. And this spaghetti diagram, this is actually the floor plan of our permit center. This is kind of the planning over here. This is the general permit center here. And what we identified was just the application step, what an applicant has to go through to do that. And in this one, I can kind of walk you through really quick. The applicant comes in, they come to our receptionist. I tell them what they want. The receptionist calls a planner comes up to the counter, the customer comes to the counter. The planner will review the application, they go back to their desk, go to the computer, create this file, then they print a fee sheet, go back to the front desk, give the fee sheet to the applicant goes across the hall to the finance department to pay. And then they're gone. Luckily, that was not too bad for their perspective. But from our perspective, what was happening is, at this time, the planner was taking in the application. It was sitting in a basket until their shift at the end of the day was over at the permit center. They were then taking that application and walking it over and putting it in another basket. In that other basket, we had our administrative staff creating a file folder. From there, after the file folder was created, it would come to my desk and it would sit in my basket. I would go through, look at the file folder, look who was assigned to the project already, take that file folder, make some notes into our computer programming, and then go take it to the actual planner that was doing the work. What we identified is that in itself can take 2 to 4 days. 2 to 4 days, and just from when the applicant submits their paperwork to where it actually hits the planner's desk and it's ready for us to start our work. So clearly that was a big identified waste. One of the things that we wanted to do with all of these 39 wastes was we needed to prioritize those. So we essentially prioritized 9 different wastes and changes that we wanted to make. And many of these are, some of them are low-hanging fruit. Some of them are where can we get the biggest bang for our buck. So we didn't just pick all the low-hanging fruit and go do those really quick, because we thought that this would make the biggest impact on the overall review process. Simply one of those changes, the application submittal and assignment, What we've done now is we've eliminated that whole file folder process and nasty spaghettigram that you saw. And what happens now is when the planner takes in that application at the counter, they actually go into our permit tracking, see who's already been assigned to this, and then they just go give it to the planner. So we've gone from 2 to 4 days to half a day, just in that one step. So that was something that we said, we don't have to go, we don't have to take it through a legislative process to make this change, let's just go do it. Did it, it's working great. Some of the other things that we identified that was really important is we wanted to make sure that our design review board had everything that they need. Were we giving them too much? Was staff spending too much time preparing staff reports when they really didn't need all of this information? So we'll be working with the design review board to identify to make sure that they're getting everything that they need and we're not giving them too much. One of the big components of our existing process is that before an applicant actually starts a formal review of their application, they have to go through 3 different, call them pre-application phases. The first thing is you have a pre-application meeting, conference with just staff. That's to kind of get the technical information out. Then we have a pre-application design guidance meeting with our design review board to make sure that the applicant is getting good guidance on the project from our design review board. And then the third pre-application meeting is our neighborhood meeting. So before they could actually submit their application, there was 3 different pre-application meetings. This also came out in our focus group, is that what has happened over time is we created this design review process that has kind of been added on to. We've made other code changes to try and fix other problems, and in doing so, we made this process really lengthy. So you can see there's just these are the 9 ones that we really wanted to look at, everything from just making sure that our application forms were correct, handing out fee sheets, and then consolidating our design standards in our handbook. This actually is one of the things that's happening right now with the downtown design review process as well. So after identifying those priorities, we had to create an action plan and an implementation and measurement plan. This is kind of our phase 2 of this land use enablement. So again, more stickies, more Post-its, and all with the idea of that continuous improvement where you've got the plan, do, check, act, / adjust. So we want to make sure that we're actually doing it now. After identifying the action plan, what we did as part of this process is we had a Kaizen recommendation report out. That's where our group came up with recommended changes, and we invited the mayor and several other individuals to come, and where the team actually reported out what we learned. It was pretty good. What we did realize is that we can cut out at least 30 days from our process. To be honest, I think that's actually on the low end. Knowing the way that our process works and the number of board meetings, I think we can probably cut out 45, maybe even 2 months out of this review process. So I get really excited about this, maybe as you can tell, and the mayor noted as well. That excitement is key, and it's amazing, I think, that we can create a good product that ensures our community and the vision and our rules are being implemented. It creates a good process for our applicants or our customer in this perspective, and it creates capacity for staff. That was a huge one, and in doing all of these steps, we realized that we can create capacity for staff and be things is that we had a much understanding from our customer perspective. Again, we go about doing our review processes. We just do them because we've done them for such a long time. And the key, again, is that process improvement and knowing it and understanding the customer perspective. We, as our group, as kind of overachievers, felt like, well, we did our duty with the review process, but we've got this great opportunity to also express our recommendations that we identified here. One of the things that we determined was that lean can work for any process. At the beginning of this, we were really, we didn't think it was going to work because design review is such a subjective process. How in the world are you going to, identify these ways, and limit it and standardize such a subjective process? Well, we believe we can do it now. We believe that lean can work for any process out there. We also believe that having an outside facilitator is very key. Making sure that you've got someone that can participate and help you guide you, keep you moving along, that doesn't necessarily know the process but can keep things moving. Another one was it was a great team building experience. Our group really came together with a common goal, and it was good. You got our team kind of out of their daily grind, so to speak, and gave them an opportunity to create something new and better. We also believe that in order to make lean work very well from our city perspective, is it's key to maybe looking at this from our legacies and strategic commitments as well. We've got a lot of commitments there. We've got measurements that's associated with it. One of the things that you can do with lean is do measurements of those. So we think that incorporating lean into the legacies and strategic commitments is also very important. And then again, one of these key things, another key component of successful lean implementation is having leadership support and the communication of it. It was great to have the mayor identify that she really believed in this process, so we're getting this top-down leadership flows all directors. Jeff is supportive. Our other directors, we report out other as well, involved. So that's key, is having that leadership throughout the process. It doesn't become a topic of, so to speak, because this is continuous improvement throughout our organization. With that, I'm open for questions.
Very cool. Thank you very much, Kurt. Gene?
Just a comment. We went through this at work. When they came around and said lean and Kaizen, I said, I don't eat that cereal. I mean, I don't want that. But seriously, it's done wonders for our bottom line productivity. It's helped our customers a lot. That's why I'm excited about it here, because it's going to help our customers and you guys be able to get a lot better. So for doing this, I don't know whose idea it was, but it was a good idea.
Terry?
I think a lot of these sound really good, but there's one element I want to make sure as going through, because as you're saying, the citizens aren't viewed as the customers, they're viewed as the stakeholders, but the citizen, in terms of, especially with building permits and other reasons, building permits and other provide for the protection of the citizen, community, the neighborhoods, and that what part in the step that when we're looking at streamlining processes, do you also consider, are we maintaining the needed protections for the citizens, for the neighborhood, for the community?
Yeah, we had a lot of discussion about that, actually, and it's really kind of identifying who is your customer in this perspective, like you said, and the citizenry is definitely a stakeholder in this, because they are key to, I mean, they are the ones that have actually defined the vision of what they believe the community should look like. And so we want to make sure that our rules and regulations implement that. That's the key difference there, is that our rules and regulations that have been adopted should already be doing that. They should already be providing that protection for the citizenry, because hopefully they participated in that process that created that rule. So we kind of start, you've got those rules that have set up here, and by having the citizenry to participate in creating those rules, we're ensuring that they're still being involved in the review process.
The rules are set up to protect, but the protection only happens if the government staff and others are making sure that they are being followed, because not every business person, not every builder, says, oh, these are the rules, we'll just do it and we don't have to, So that part always has to be there. We've always got rules, but so I really feel, yes, reduce where you can internally, as long as everything is being protected on the other end. And that's, if you cut steps that has inspection or other parts, then, and I don't think you will, but I just want to, make
mostly
sure
they
that it's
won't,
not
'cause I
just,
won't.
you know, we're doing customer service to make it easier to build and do other things, which I think is great, as long as everything is in place and also make sure those things are in place and are happening.
Jack and then Pinky.
So you're talking about some internal changes you'll be doing soon or already have done. Will you be bringing the 30 recommendation to the council code change issues that that will need our approval?
Yeah, I think as Kurt described on one of the slides, there were 3 general categories of change: operational, some of the business of how we move things through the department. Administratively, there's process changes. Process changes that would involve code change, some of it may not. And then there's the other legislative changes in terms of changing content of the standards, the code, something we were just talking about, I think Terry just brought up. So any legislative changes obviously have to come through City Council for your approval. And there are some involved in that list of recommendations. There's a couple in the priority list. One of them actually, and something I just wanted to, I think Kurt may have just slightly misspoke. Do you want to go back to the prioritized changes? There it is. So the last bullet actually on that slide, consolidate design standards and handbook. What that's doing, that's actually part of the legislative package for the downtown plan and regulatory package that is with the Planning Commission right now, coming to council here shortly. What that is that's an improvement that we're making so that whether it's a customer or a stakeholder and staff included in that, you don't have to go to 2 different locations to figure out design standards in the city center area. We're just packaging that to one location so that anybody, staff, customer, citizen, just needs to go to one spot to figure out what the design standards are for doing a building in the city center area.
Okay. To follow up on a different topic, at our council retreat that we had a few weeks back, I brought up a concern, and I've talked with both you, Jeff, and the mayor about it, associated with this is dealing with our permitting, but as far as our land use planning efforts and decisions that come off of applications, that same type of lean analysis could be done to that as well. And we had talked about the Type 6 process as being somewhat onerous sometimes, simple types of changes that nobody has a problem with, but it ends up sucking up a lot of staff time just to generate the necessary paperwork to do relatively minor changes. When we, a few weeks back, we went and approved a demonstration unit or demonstration project that created 1 unit of housing, but it must have taken many, many hours of staff time to go through and just create the staff report and then go through to the Planning Commission and then come to us and the public hearing part of it. It seems like that was a perfect example or poster child of how we could go and maybe improve that part of it too. So the question is would you like some direction from the council to maybe move this type of effort into the land use planning?
What we're doing right now is we're reading a book called We Don't Make Widgets, which is basically the philosophy that you can only do this in a car manufacturing plant or with a permit. But I think, as Kurt said, all the department heads are reading this book, and they're all going to come up with the kind of things that you're talking about. So they've already got the direction. You can reinforce that if you want to, but we are reading the book, we are answering the questions every week, and we are moving forward on. Jeff happened to be the first person to volunteer to go through a more formal process. Lorna also volunteered as HR that goes through the hiring process, which is also takes a significant amount of time. Not all HR's, issue. There's a lot of different ones. So we are actually going through this department by department.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
But thank you for your support, because I also think it's very important.
Thank you.
Mine is more a comment. I'm really pleased and excited about this. I've been through the Kaizen process as well, and it changes everything you do for the rest of your life. I do my kitchen this way now, so which is great, because that always means continuous improvement, and people will be thinking of things. And I think it's very significant that this is where we chose to start with in this lean process, because the citizen feedback we get often, and the highest concern we always have, is in regards to the permitting department. And the comment I always hear is time is money. Stop wasting my time, stop wasting my money. And for you to find this many days of reduction in the permitting process, I think is going to reflect very well out in the community, and I think people are going to be very pleased. So I'm looking forward to our next survey in regards to permitting. But well done. I think this is awesome. Thank you very much.
All right, and Roxanne.
Well, I just wanted to commend this also, because I think this uniquely ties back to the discussion we were just having, because we can set population trends, but at the same time we need to make sure that we're open for business, we're available for business, we're willing to work with business. And to me, this makes us really competitive. When you're looking at places to locate your business, when you're looking at expanding your business, you want to make sure that these permitting processes are going to go smoothly. Reputations are out there about this already, and I'm glad that we're going to start to change that, because we can really help with that.
Anyone else? Michael.
Well, Jeff, you're the third, maybe the fourth planning director who's tried to make improvements in the permitting process. And I think there have been definite improvements in it, but this sounds like it's one of the largest improvements yet, and I appreciate that. I do hear what you heard, Pinky, about time is money and don't waste my time. I also heard concerns about the uncertainty of the outcome. There's a feeling of you never know what you're going to get despite sincerest of efforts. It kind of seems capricious rather than predictable. So my question is, do you think that the lean process, in addition to making it more efficient, might also remove that kind of uncertainty factor? I think we should deny bad permits, and we should approve good ones, and we should modify ones that need modifying. We need really good outcomes, but does this also address that uncertainty factor, so that people know if they put in a quality application that follows the rules, that the outcome...
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit of a three-legged stool: timeliness, transparency, and predictability. And those 39 recommendations are really batched into those three. You can couch each of those 39 recommendations into one or more of three areas. So that's what we're focusing on, and I think work with the process. Just it's 1/4 done. We've taken a chunk of the timeline, the design review permit, the land use enablement part of it, and we're working with it now. We move into the second step here within the next couple months, in the application phase, and move forward. So there's a lot of work left to be done, and it really does get back to that plan. It's continuous improvement. It's a cycle of continuous improvement that doesn't end.
Kelly.
And you heard how much time this took for those 6 people to go through all of this. And that's one reason why we're working at the department head level, because we can also make changes that don't have to go through the whole big process. This is very complicated. But there are processes that maybe aren't so complicated, and if everybody's hearing the same information, it's kind of the viral and opportunistic chance to change something that just makes sense, especially to the staff who know the process the best. And I want to reassure council members that this is not about changing the policy, this is about changing the process. So the very first thing the city administration has committed to is the health and safety of our residents. So we would not be making it easier to do the wrong thing. That is not the goal of this process. If there are policy changes that would actually make a difference, those will come before the council, and the council will make the decision on those policy changes.
Okay. Looks like that's it. Great presentation. Thank you so much. Okay, last but definitely not least, today we have a presentation by Sustainable Connections. The city provides funding to Sustainable Connections to support the Think Local First and Eat Local First programs. The program increases awareness of the benefits of choosing local first through the development of marketing materials and programs such as the Where the Locals Go coupon book, Whatcom Food and Farm Finder, Eat Local Month, and Buy Local for the holidays. Sustainable Connections staff will provide an overview of these activities and accomplishments, and I'm only smiling because I remember a lot of these things. They were a lot of fun to develop. And so we'll turn it over to Derek Long with Sustainable Connections.
Thank you. Great meeting I've been able to observe the last hour and a half. Weighty topics. No, I'm super glad I was here, and I feel confident in you guys, and so let me jump into this presentation because my team and I designed a presentation that would bring this tree alive for you using Prezi, but then we discovered later that the technology isn't supported inside chambers, and so I'm going to do my best to bring it alive for you. But I wanted to thank Tara Sandine and I were going through the annual report from last year for this contract for Think Local First and Food and Farming. And she said, there's a lot of good news in here, let's get it in front of council. So I want to thank her and thank you guys for your time. I also want to state that this is only part of our partnership. It doesn't touch on the cool downtown improvement gardens, the rain gardens. It doesn't touch on eco districts and the waterfront. It doesn't touch on the strong partnership we've had over the years in the Community Energy Challenge, which might position us to be leaders in with the Georgetown project. So it's I'll use the arrows. When we're thinking about this presentation, we went to your legacies and strategic commitments, and all 9 legacies. Our work at Sustainable Connections touches all 9. First, and the whole piece of work that you guys did to put those together, I think it's super high quality. And the one where we perhaps have more touch points is in the vibrant, sustainable economy. And so I just want to emphasize, with the first bullet, diversity is good. We want businesses thriving in all sectors of the economy. Really love the attention paid to the interdependence of the environment, the economy, and people. I also like the fact that you added agricultural economy and farmland preservation, because the city can play some important roles and is already doing so. You guys have seen, over the years, we've all, I think, felt a bit of pride in our rankings in national surveys and so on. This is good news. In my case, or in my opinion, this positions us in Bellingham as recognizing the fact that we're leaders. The world needs leaders on these important things that we're doing. And there is that double edge of the sword. Well, if we're too discovered, too many people will come. I think we need leaders more than we need to be concerned about that possibility. And so, yes, we ranked number 8 in livability, and my staff in particular really excited that the little write-up mentioned the buy local movement is strongly supported, and residents reinvest in their community by supporting other local businesses. The other one that really caught my eye was the happiest and healthiest small community in America. And were you guys able to read this? I don't know if you're ever, but I dug into it a bit, and a lot of the narrative in the introduction and so on was talking about how this is a business issue. That business leaders need to get more sophisticated in how they think of happiness and well-being, and that it's a business issue because people with high rates of well-being cost less and perform better. And it's just cool when we rank #1 in there. One other thing, a little graph that I saw, they were graphing well-being of people in different occupations across the nation. And business owner ranked #1 in well-being, which is maybe a little unexpected. But it relates to this Think Local First concept that we want more business owners in our community. There's all kinds of benefits, even ones that include helping us rank #1 in well-being. And I also looked, and they actually surveyed 509 people in Bellingham. Oh, and there's a little bit of, this is a national survey with lots of people, but that's a big sample size for us. It also reminded me that I saw a little Facebook chatter on this ranking, and for some people it's really important to note that this is a Bellingham metropolitan area, so it's not just city limits, it's Whatcom County as well, and I like that recognition that we stand together on important things. We love Bellingham. Locals and visitors alike. The tourist studies show that people love Bellingham. And one of the main things they like about it is the fact that it's unique, that we're original. And unique businesses are part of that originality and attract locals and the Think Local First supports those unique businesses. Sometimes it's difficult. Technical difficulties? Oh, okay. Getting metrics on campaigns like this can be a little bit challenging. One way we do it is just survey the businesses that participate in the program, and 80% of our members report that this particular campaign has had a positive impact on their business. And every year, we get excited for the chance to benchmark our local businesses against national businesses.
You can go the other way.
Come closer. Yeah? And so the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, good? Should I start over? Did you guys hear everything else? They do a national survey, and we encourage businesses in Whatcom County to participate. And so this first graph here just shows independent retailer sales. Independent retailer sales across the nation rose last year 5.3% among survey participants. Sustainable Connections retailers in Whatcom County reported an increase 1% increase in sales. Another important indicator that we like is that, buy local campaigns just simply work. The businesses who participated and answered the question about revenue growth in 2013 said that in communities without buy local campaigns, revenue only grew 2.3% for independent businesses, and it grew 7% in communities where buy local campaigns exist. As many of you know, we wrote the book on buy local campaigns in Bellingham, and a lot of those campaigns have been inspired by this town, where we show such good leadership and support. By the way, the City of Bellingham has funded this campaign since year one, which is 13 years ago. I want to quickly get into some Eat Local First issues, too, because this really connects to that legacy statement of supporting the agricultural economy. We work with over 200 businesses in the food industry, fishermen, farmers, value-added food producers, retailers, grocery retailers, restaurants, caterers. And some of our surveys of those businesses show that 70% of food buyers, and those would be restaurants, grocers, and caterers who are buying wholesale food, rate the Eat Local First program as very or extremely valuable in increasing sales of locally produced food. Essentially, is we not only want customers to be supporting businesses just because they're local, but we want them to support businesses that are also supporting other local businesses, right? Because if we keep those dollars circulating in our economy, we get higher incomes, we get more jobs, we get lower unemployment rates, things that we want. Some of the key publications and activities that we produce with this program, one is the Food and Farm Finder. Over the years, we've been able, with support of the businesses in the food industry and the county and the city, we've been able to increase the Food and Farm Finder production to 30,000 copies, and we've been able to distribute it in 7 counties. Our goal here is to increase Whatcom County's reputation as a culinary and agritourism destination. And that not only brings people here to spend money, but it also makes locally produced products that are sold in other counties more recognizable and more successful. This has gone so well that this last year we started distributing all those tourist racks, you know, on the ferries and different things like that. But our Food and Farm Finder is a thick thing, you know, and so they would go quick before they were refilled. And so with support from Bellingham's Tourism Fund this year, we're going to, for the first time, produce a culinary and agritourism map, which is just specific to tourists. And it's a thinner piece, and it'll last longer and bring more people to Whatcom County to enjoy our food. This is Eat Local Month photo from the Home Skillet. Happy customer. Every September is Eat Local Month, and where we really challenge restaurants and grocers and caterers and so on to go above and beyond. This is institutions as well, the schools and Western Washington University and the hospital. But these 17 restaurants in particular sourced over 35% of their food purchases that month went to local producers, creating the kind of economic impact we want to see. The farm tour is another activity that's big for us. These are 2 happy kids at Bellwood Acres. We get a lot of people out from the city. We're going to grow that 8% number from outside Whatcom County.
Now we're talking.
The trade meeting? Oh, the distillery. Yeah. Yeah, this is Sage and Sky Farms visiting with Bellwood Acres, and the Food and Farm trade meeting was attended by 130 attendees. These are farm-to-school staff people, health professionals, farmers, wholesale buyers like the grocery retailers and so on, chefs. And people meet each other and they do business. And this event has become a signature event for developing wholesale sales year after year. Things are generally good when supply and demand are increasing at similar paces. Among our food participants, demand is feeling like it's a little bit stronger than supply, which is good. That encourages more food entrepreneurs, more farmers to get started. And so in the supply side, 71%, and you see the 2012 numbers, both said 70%. In 2013, 71% of buyers said that the availability of local food has increased. So we got a slight uptick, and 74% of producers said the demand for local foods has increased. But we're doing well. And that is all that we prepared for the presentation. I think I saved us a few minutes in honor of your time, but wondered if you guys had any questions for me, because I'm happy to answer now. Or
how's your membership? Is it pretty good?
Yeah, it's still over 500. We felt the recession a little bit. Yeah, the number of businesses that we interact with keeps growing every year. So tracking shows about 2,000 businesses that we work with. You don't have to be a member to get Towards Zero Waste services, for example. You don't have to be a member to go to the trade meeting and do business with local farmers. So we're working with about 2,000 businesses. That number keeps going up. Membership took a dip, but we'll grow it again. Terry?
Any other questions? Oh, I want to thank you, Derek.
Yeah, thank you, Terry.
Always great presentation, and glad to see things going well.
Yeah, really well.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Derek.
So that's our last an item on the Committee of the Whole, but it brings us to approval of minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes to One needing correction. One is the minute for the council retreat. On that, there is a correction. It stated that it took place at the mayor's boardroom. It took place at Woodstock Farm. So, do I...
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second to approve that sentence with the corrections. All those in favor, answer aye.
Aye. Aye.
And the second set of minutes is for March 24th, committee meeting minutes.
Move approval.
Okay, all those in favor, answer aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any old or new business? Okay, seeing none, that brings us to, we do have, at this time, the council meeting will adjourn to executive session. Executive sessions are closed to the public. A report will be given at the regular meeting. Governing body may hold an executive session only for specified purposes which are identified in RCW 42.30. We had 8 executive sessions listed. A 9th has been added. We have 1 potential litigation, 7 potential property acquisition, and the item that's been added is potential litigation, Association of Bellingham Merchants and Citizens versus City of Bellingham, Catholic Housing Services of Western Washington, and Catholic Community Services of Western Washington. It's set for Whatcom County Superior Court, number 14-2-00268-4. So we are now adjourned to executive session.